Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are going through every game that is on my Steam follow list as a way of cleaning up the games, determining whether they are good enough to move to the wish list, which is the list of games I actually do want to own and want to cover on my channel. For the most part, there's maybe a handful of games on the wish list that I can't cover because of YouTube family friendliness, but otherwise, we're doing a sorting here as I'm recording this during spring cleaning. The Steam spring cleaning event has come and gone as a weekend, and that inspired me that it was finally time to get around here. And we'll be looking at games based on one of two categories. One, it's either going to have either a special appeal to me, or two, it's going to have a legitimate amount of people reviewing the games, and thus mob rule enacts, and there's relevancy to the game and a reason to cover it. It is possible that I'll cover a game that looks like something I would definitely not have fun with, but it's so wildly popular that I feel like the need to still cover it. Although often when games are so wildly popular, everybody's already heard of them anyways. So we're looking at two categories of games, either games that have over 20 verified purchase reviews, which is what these numbers are. And this is 44 in the last 30 days. This is 587 in the lifetime of the product. Or we'll be looking at a lot of games that have come out as of recording 6 months ago or earlier, and seeing if after 6 months, if the game hasn't gotten 20 reviews, it may still be good, but it certainly isn't relevant at that point. And then we'll be looking for other red flags. Today we're going through games starting with the letter F. Going through games starting with the letter E was pretty easy because there wasn't a lot of games, and it did occur to me that some of these games on the follow list are actually on the follow list because I was using it as a way to remind myself to remove them from the wish list. It is difficult to remove games from the wish list on Steam. You have to go to the wish list, type in the name of the game so you can actually find that game, then click a button, then click OK. Whereas it is really easy when you're logged in just to toggle the follow button. So there's a totally different system, and it's annoying. So this is an early access game. That is a red flag if it was 6 months old. Otherwise, I'd be willing to give it a little bit more time. This is only been for a few weeks as of me looking at it. It's $19.99, which it doesn't seem like that is too high of a price. This is a factory simulation city builder game, of which there's been several games that are popular in that genre lately. Things like Satisfactory. This doesn't look too bad, and it does take kind of a logging concept, I would say, instead of making a factory that is just making more modern electronics components or devices. This is single player. If I see a game that's multiplayer only, I wouldn't want to cover it because I just don't cover multiplayer games. We'll keep an eye out for some languages. If this was English and simplified Chinese only, that might be a red flag. If it was English and Russian only, that might be a red flag because there's a lot of low effort games that support just English and Chinese, or just English and Russian. This game does not fall in that category. In fact, the way this game is going, I just really need to leave it on the follow list and give it a full 6 months. And next time I do a cleanup, either 6 months from the time I'm recording right now, or probably a year from the time I'm recording now, we would need to come back to this game. If I need to look at reviews, I would only look at the negative reviews, and I would skim them at least. Positive reviews really don't mean anything to me. we might keep an eye out to see that it was actually purchased on Steam and not a review that was where they got the game for free or they activated it via a Steam key, which means it potentially could have been gotten for free or at a seriously discounted price. So this isn't much of an example of a bad game. This is an example of a game that just needs more time. Once it comes out of early access, this would go to my wish list. Although, in all fairness, just because the game's on the wish list, I have about 1,000 games on the wish list, and the fad of factory building sim games may have completely faded out by the time I thought about purchasing this game, and there may just be better offers. So it is also possible that as my standards improve, I put something like this on a wish list and then I decide actually no, it shouldn't be on the wish list anymore. But for now it stays on the follow list because it's early access, because I absolutely refuse to play early access games. Next game we have is called the Faerun Collection. It's 4 games in one: Faerun, Faerun 2, Faerun Origin, and Faerun Blast. It looks like a pixely retro Legend of Zelda style game. It might fall under the category of an RPG Maker style game, except for the fact that I can kind of tell this isn't made with RPG Maker. The way things are being depicted here doesn't make it feel like that. That being said, if this is 4 RPGs or JRPGs in total, and the price I assume is going to be pretty small, these must be really, really short experiences. Right now, I have a ton of tabs open, by the way, and that messes with the cache, so some of these screenshots aren't going to load up. Apologies for that. Poor preparation on my part. So that'll be part of the problem. Also, if we run into any adult games, I have a blurring function that I'll use. We may run into a few of those. Yeah, this looks like a Zelda clone that's not made in RPG Maker, but I guess you probably don't deserve points or extra credit just because you didn't use RPG Maker. It's $9.99, and what I want to see, and this is actually a little bit weird, is the total time that people have played this. Notice this has been out for more than 6 months. It came out May 16th, 2018. It has 9 user reviews, which is not the 20 arbitrary number I have. I want to see. I'm a little concerned that it supports Chinese, but it also supports Japanese, so I don't think that it's a low effort game by that measure. It may just be a low effort in some other way. The other thing that's weird is Faerun is not anything I've ever heard of before, so it's not like this is a side story or collection of RPGs that later spawned a whole series. So this person played for 12.6 hours. Faerun Origin is the simple and quickest of them all. The games are more or less straightforward, but Origin is really linear. This person played for 2.6 hours. Apparently this was released on the iPad 3DS, and that might explain its shortness, certainly. Let's see. Faerun 1 is short, max 2 hours. Faerun 2 is a lot bigger and also more polished. I haven't played Origin yet. Here we have 9 hours. Really good puzzle exploration games with impressive level design, around 9 hours to clear without going hard for achievements. Cute, anything combat related is easy, 8 out of 10. This person played for 22 hours. This person paid for 8.5 hours. And the one negative review here is nice try, but a weak imitation of other better games. Would not recommend unless you didn't know any better. There is something actually very appealing with the idea of playing a RPG series and not having to put a lot of time in it. That being said, I think you also could make the argument that is just wasting your time, because you're not going to play something like Faerun and then turn around and say, oh, I've experienced Final Fantasy 13, which would be closer to a 100-hour JRPG, or even a better comparison, you're not going to play Faerun 1 and say you've experienced a Legend of Zelda for the NES, which is a game that would take you probably 10 hours to beat if you know what you're doing. So it really puts you in a weird position, me in a weird position mentally, because it's basically an RPG game that doesn't follow the number one rules of RPG games, which is they are long and they are grindy. And the number one thing I don't like about RPG games are that they are long and they are grindy. So I guess this is wishlistable by that definition. It's not relevant, so it would be kind of a hidden gem in a sense. It's probably not what most people looking to play RPGs are looking for, but most people looking to play RPGs are probably going to play something like Dragon's Quest or Final Fantasy or any larger, much more known series. So this is kind of an example of like baby's first RPG, I guess is the best way you could describe it. Next game we have here is called Fantasy Strike, which is a fighting game, and I will say RPGs, JRPGs, fighting games, visual novels are all categories of games that I'm not sure if I would ever cover them on my channel, and I'm not sure how I would cover them. The idea of what are the good games to play, what games in a fighting series should be played in particular is something I have not been able to wrap my head around. I don't know if I need to play the most recent Street Fighter, the most recent Mortal Kombat. A game like Fantasy Strike here is an indie fighting game. There's a large collection of indie fighting games out there, and they tend to be better than you would think. Blaze Blue is a kind of indie fighting game that's extremely popular. Let's see. This is early access, but it is 85% positive so far. So this came out September 14th, 2017, though. That is the problem. Do I want to give this fighting game any more time, or do I want to just admit that that they are done? So they're still working on the game as of May 2019, but they've been given 2 years, and so I don't know how you go about this. Here. It's flashing, colorful entry with potential. Great for anyone looking to get into fighting games. That's kind of me in a nutshell. That being said, here's a review. This game doesn't solve any problems for a beginner. It just transforms them into another place. Yeah, the video was describing that there were some gameplay control mechanics in it designed for easy play for new players. So I think this is probably a false path of a game, for 2 reasons. One, because it's been almost 2 years, and even though it's positive, it's still in early access, whereas its lineup should have been updated and patched enough to the point where you wouldn't be calling it early access. It does have online multiplayer, which is kind of mandatory for a fighting game. So if I found a fighting game that didn't have online multiplayer, even though I'm not going to play online too much, it falls out of relevancy at that point. But I think, yeah, if you were new to fighting games and you played this, you would probably learn bad habits, and teaching yourself something new or learning bad habits from a bad teacher is a very dangerous thing when trying to learn something new. So Final Fantasy Strike, yeah, it needs to leave the fall list. Next we have a game called Fat City, which will blur since it says it's says that it doesn't seem like this page is going to load. There we go. Got it. Well, I have to blur it still. I need to see what the part of this was the part that they were age verifying against. It doesn't look like there's anything here that would even have this game age verified, so let's de-blur. This game, Fat City, is an action puzzle game with 60 targets spread through the 5 boroughs in New York. Players will use their cunning and brain power to plan raids and execute getaways to pull off the big bucks. This, to me, looks like this is a top-down strategy placement game or pathing game. Kind of like Pac-Man. I don't really see anything here. This isn't tagged with gore, it isn't tagged with violence, it isn't tagged with nudity or sexual content. Frankly, the only thing that gets age verified on Steam really is nudity and sexual content. This is $9.99. It's got 2 reviews, came out October 22nd, 2018, so it's not really relevant. It has VR support, but apparently not mandatory VR gameplay because there's no red warning box. I don't know what this would feel like or look like in VR. This looks very much like a mobile game, not a VR game. Yeah. The 2 positive reviews don't really mean anything. Here's one review. I bought it because I had VR mode, but it turned out to be completely unnecessary and actually makes the controls way more frustrating than they already are. And that's a positive review. Yeah, there's nothing here. I don't even know why this is on the follow list. My only guess is maybe I accidentally clicked the wishlist button and was trying to remind myself to remove it from the wishlist. This is not anywhere close to being interesting visually to me. Alright, moving on, then the next game we have is called Fate Hunters, which is 100% positive in the last 30 days, 79% positive in its lifetime. So I play Hearthstone every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. While I'm playing Hearthstone, I talk about video game news and look at nearly every game that comes out on Steam. That is at the point in which I add games to the follow list. So even throughout the course of recording these cleanup videos, I'm actually adding some games back. I'm always looking for a good card game. This seems to be more of a deck builder game than a collectible card game. And I'm always looking for something that would replace Hearthstone, and the odds of ever finding anything to replace Hearthstone are not extremely high. So this seems to me like it is a deck building card versus card game that's probably a little simplistic. You build your deck, explore dangerous dark fantasy worlds, and face fearsome foes, risk your life to get powerful treasures. This is early access again, so that's a problem. Even if it is possible. And they give reasons why they're in early access. There's always an explanation, but the explanation really doesn't matter to me. This is $14.99, beta update on May 24th. It's single player only, so it fails as a card game, really. There's no justification I can think of in my mind why a single player only game should still be in early access. You could have released the game as a final product when it first came out as a single player game if you had it polished and finished, and then updated it with multiplayer later, although that probably wouldn't work for a collectible card game either, adding multiplayer later. So the real idea is you've got to have multiplayer before you do anything else. There are games that are probably better than this, like Slay the Spire. Let's see. The encounters and enemies are extremely unbalanced. 6 months later, still in early access. I think that's pretty much all I need to see. This is another card game, leaving the follow list. Next we have Fate the Fault Silence Dependent, which is a probably Japanese visual novel from Sekai Project, which is a well-known Japanese developer, and seems like it is a little bit more than just a visual novel, because when you're looking at this where you can pick up items and use them, that's more, and when there's this might be who you want to talk to next in the visual novel element. I like the animation style, it's fine. Maybe lacking a little bit of detail in the faces, but not terrible. Here you have clearly an example of them trying not to show the faces, and here you have a kind of blurry background. There's a lot of sparks and light flickering. This isn't terrible though. This is from the developer Alice in Dissonance, which is a name that is memorable, certainly, so I do remember it. That being said, this isn't out at all. So this, unfortunately, I've fallen prey to fall listing a few games that aren't out, and I just don't care, frankly, to have anything on the fall list if it doesn't have a release date. So this needs to leave for that reason. When this game actually does come out, which could be any time, Japanese people love to announce dates and then push back the announced dates of games, which probably is better than what Western game developers do, which is announce dates, make the announced date, and then release an unfinished garbage game and then promise to fix it later, and half the time they don't even do that. This is Japanese language, so I do assume it is a Japanese visual novel. I don't really need to consider this game though, unfortunately. We'll see more screenshots, I'll see more information about this when it actually comes out. The Fault series, there may be a series here, or there might be an anime by the name of Fault. So I could potentially do more research, but there's kind of no need to either. I could see what Alice in Dissonance has made. Yeah, Fault Milestone 1 is a visual novel, so there is a whole series of them. So that's, let's see, if I filter by games, there's Fault Milestone 1, which came out in 2014. It's very positive, of 1,922 reviews. Fault Milestone 2 is overwhelmingly positive for 1,514 reviews. And then Makana, Gramu, and Fairy Bell, which seems to be, I think this was a side story, like a story being told to a character from the Fault series, and it's very positive also. And so they're just continuing their series pretty well. That being said, this is also a visual novel though, so I'm not sure how many visual novels I'm actually going to spend any time actually following. But visual novels are the bestseller games on Steam. So there is a reason to support this as a connoisseur of video games that I am, and who buys a lot of video games. I'm not really upset if I buy visual novels and actually never get around to playing them, because clearly people do like them. Clearly as a style of game they should be supported, and probably they should be highlighted a little bit more. There's a bit of a problem as a YouTuber trying to play a visual novel, because you'll see down here they already have locked in that neither the Japanese or the English version is going to have full audio, so every single bit of text typed I would have to read out loud, or I'd have to sit in silence as the game goes by. And I frankly don't think it's as close to fair use if I'm going to sit in silence and play a game. All those streamers or people that put up videos on YouTube and it's like full gameplay video, no commentary. That's not fair use at that point. You have to almost consistently and constantly comment on the game you're playing for it to be fair use. At least I tried to do that. So yeah, but yeah, this needs to leave just because there's no release date. I'll get back around to it later. I wouldn't be surprised if it's quite a while. Actually, see, you can see here it says it's coming out in 2017 quarter 4. It's now mid quarter 2 or at the end of quarter 2 2019 as of this recording, and it's still not out. Very typical for a Japanese developer. But you know what? I'd rather have the product be good. I'd rather it be finished and come out late than come out on time and not be finished. We've seen that way too much for games like Anthem or even Apex Legends, Fallout 76. There's been quite a lot of games lately that are just not good, but they came out close to their release date or on their release date. Next we have a game called Feather, which is a game where you're flying around, and I've done a couple of these, and often what I've run into is the games that let you fly around don't have much of anything else in them, so I want to be a little bit cautious looking at a game like this. That being said, overall it's 87% positive, and it's been 91% positive in the last 30 days. What's usually there's not big differences between the last 30 days and overall. This does look like it is selling itself as a relaxing simulation game where you fly around as a bird and you can explore things. And in all fairness, this probably is just Unity assets that have been pre-bought, and the only thing that they really would have had to do is lock down the flying mechanic, and that often is the thing that people fail to do, is they make a difficult, annoying flying mechanic. It's $9.99, which is not asking too much. It has one achievement, so you might argue that it's a achievement game, since Steam highlights games where you get 100% achievement, and since its achievement is called Thanks for Playing, I bet you get it the second you launch the game. You can also argue that games that have 100 achievements or 50 achievements that seem really simple or short are achievement games. I don't know why people want to get achievements on Steam. It really doesn't do anything for it. Let's see. If we limit ourselves down to the 12 negative reviews, Feather's not a bad game, but I didn't see any negative reviews about how short it is. I expected a journey or flower-like experience. It is a game where you explore an open area for 20 to 30 minutes. If you're okay with the 20 to minutes of a relaxing experience, go for it. Let's see. I don't think the price justifies the game, says this review, as I'm skimming over it and not reading it out loud. So there is something to be said about that, certainly. This is a simplistic game, and it is asking $10. And often people will make the argument that, well, we're a small indie developer and that's why we deserve to charge a high price. That's not how the open markets work, unfortunately. You're a small developer, which means you've made a game that has basically no demand, and with low demand or no demand, you have to lower the price to convince more people to buy it. I almost never buy games at full price, but even if this was 50% off in a $5 game, $5 for 30 minutes is asking quite a lot. So, I don't know. It's basically a vertical slice or a tech demo of a game. I can't really, in my mind, justify paying even $5 for it. Is this an example of a game that is just pricing itself out of a sale? And is that a good reason for me to remove things off the wish list? Because there's probably at least 50 games on the wish list right now that have always been overpriced and always will be overpriced because they're not allowed to go on sale, even during a big store-wide sale. I think that's an argument to make for another day, and for now I can put this on the wish list. It may come down to a point where it just sits there, and then I'll do a wish list cleanup and say, actually, this isn't worth the price. I have some plugins that aren't working right now that would have tell me the historical low price of a game like this, and if the historical low price of it is $9.99 and it's never been on sale, or it's only gone down to like $7.99, that will play a factor when I'm actually considering purchasing things, which is not exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm just considering if it needs to be on the wish list, which is the step in between being on the follow list and being considered for purchase. Next, we have a game called Feed and Grow Fish, which seems like a 3D fish environment simulator game. It's 67% in the last 30 days from 40 reviews, but it's 70% overall. So what is the problem that has happened in the last 30 days that we've seen a 3% drop in its fandom? Even being 70% overall, it's being labeled as mostly positive because of how many reviews it has, not because of it being a high percentage of positive reviews. I think the first problem here is it's still early access. When this came out January 8th, 2016, this is an incredibly old game. I would love to see a game like this where you play as a shark swimming around eating fish. There's a game called Feeding Frenzy. I know that it exists, but it's not 3D, and it's more of an arcade quick experience. So this was a game I was considering most definitely because I was looking for a 3D Feeding Frenzy style game where you're, as a fish, are eating bigger... as a fish, you're swimming around eating smaller fish, and then after you eat the smaller fish, you become a bigger fish, and you try to eventually work your way up to being a shark. That seems to be the case of what's happening here. It's rather bloody. Wonder what the percentage of fish with red blood actually are. I guess maybe still it's maybe most fish do have red blood. $14.99. English only, 19 achievements. Let's see. Would like if you had a freaking survival and could eat something, because I can't eat a single thing that... What is deathmatch even anyway? There's no starfish or anything like that. I thought I would love this game, but it is terrible for me. Not good. It's not that good, honestly. Also way too much lag. Not a good game for old PCs. I hate this game that I once loved. So yeah, seems like in modern perspectives, people are not liking it. It's, as far as similar games, they're recommending Raft, which is Raft out of early access yet? Or Stranded Deep, which is these are both survival games. Shark Attack 2 Deathmatch, it was a human versus a shark. They're not quite the same things. Here, Subnautica and Subnautica Below Zero, not quite the same things though. Yeah, most of the games being listed here are survival games that have more to do with being in the ocean and surviving and collecting resources, being around or on or under the ocean. It doesn't have to do with playing as a fish. Let's see. Seems like they're still working on the game, but they're up to update 0.10.1, so that's still not at version 1.0. This is just another great example of developers without a good producer, director, boss in general, somebody who can set schedules and get things accomplished. This clearly feels like it's being made by one person or a small team that is doing it in a very poor fashion. So yeah, this needs to leave the fall list. Next we have a game called Feudal Alloy. Alloy as in a metal alloy. Seems like it's a hack and slash game of robots versus robots. It's 70% positive of 140 verified purchases. It's claiming to be a Metroidvania game, an adventure game. Is it a roguelike, or is it the locations of everything in the same place every time? Because usually a Metroidvania would be same location every time. I've been looking for Metroidvania games. There's not so far any Castlevania games I've found that are great on Steam, and not found any Metroidvania games that I've really loved. I'm not 100% sure that I would love any of them. Apparently there's a fish in the tank of this robot, so I guess maybe you're playing as a fish in this game also, coincidentally. I like this. I imagine I put this on the fall list when it came out January 17th, 2019. It hasn't even been given a full 6 months. It's $16.99. Apparently it's coming out for the PS4 and Xbox One. So yeah, I don't see anything here that sparks any red flags. 76 on Metacritic and points out that it's probably a decent game. The thing I was wanted to look at though is, was there a claim of a roguelike element? No. It says varied hand-drawn environments, a huge interconnected world filled with a wide variety of enemies. Yeah, it seems like it is a true Metroidvania game. There's some negative reviews here, but I don't think I can ignore the positives to follow the negatives in this case. This is mob rule. When you have 70% positives, it's a little low, certainly. But I like what I'm seeing. So hopefully I won't find that it plays terribly or anything like that. It wouldn't be 70% if that was the case, or it shouldn't be at least. Although, in all truthfulness, the review numbers on a game on Steam can be pretty well out of here. Here we have another game that is an adult game that I'd have to log into, and it's not worth the time to log in. So we may have just a special video at the end of all of these recordings where I just log into all of these adult games and look at them, but probably not even bother to do that because it'll probably be less than a dozen, and almost certainly every single one of them are a Japanese lewd visual novel or sex game of some sort. Something that I would love to have if it's meets the quality just to support that type of game being made, but something that I couldn't ever cover on YouTube, but maybe I'll find a service someday in the future where I could cover that, or find a way to do a lot of editing. I learned how to blur videos in the process of setting up these recordings, so theoretically I could do that while streaming or recording, but it would have to implement a delay system, and I'm still wrapping my head around that idea. So next we have a game called Fight the Gods. It's rated 84% positively. Now, is this a fighting game, or is this a MMO or a MOBA? Because there definitely was a MOBA where you played as gods from different pantheons, like Greek pantheon, Chinese pantheon, things like that, and you would, or Viking, Nordic pantheon. Let's see, it's a 2D mythology-based fighting game. And here's Santa Claus, so you get to fight Santa Claus. Versus Jesus, so it might be a bit of a troll game too. I probably saw this and thought this would be interesting. I definitely thought last year I tried to find Christmas themed games to play in December, and really none of the ones I found were good, and there really wasn't a lot of them in the first place. You'll find quite a lot of horror games that fit rather well in October for Halloween, but yeah, what's being shown here, I don't know if this is a joke game or a troll game, and there's kind of a difference there. A joke game would be that despite the fact that it's skirting controversy by having Jesus in it and Santa Claus in it, whereas having any of the other gods, probably not going to skirt a lot of controversy unless, of course, you put Muhammad in it, or like the Buddha in it. Maybe that would make a little bit of controversy. But any Greek or Nordic, putting Thor in it, putting any of the other characters in it, probably not a thing. Buddha is in it. Okay. $14.99. It has single player, it has multiplayer and online multiplayer. It's still being updated. Came out March 28th, 2019. So it's actually not even been out that long. Or that's weird. Okay, that was a couple months ago. Yeah, I'm recording this in May and I keep getting March and May confused. Let's see what the negative reviews say and make sure this isn't all just jokers. Game has merit and fun, but is too political. Why can I fight Jesus but not Muhammad or Buddha? If they add them on, I would recommend or take Jesus out. Seems like Buddha is in there. But see, yeah, you're definitely skirting controversy. The idea is cool and hilarious. It could be fun if you could play with friends. These are all early access reviews. The game's not in early access anymore. So, what if we were to limit this down to... Let's see. Most of the reviews that are negative are way here. So if I was to try and limit myself to just to January, I don't know if this is actually going to load by drawing this box. What I'm seeing on this graph, and usually I don't use their review graph as an indicator of anything, is that this game sold gangbusters in that first day. Maybe it was a Kickstarter game and that's why I got a bunch of reviews. and then by the time you hit January, everybody has forgotten about it. So So yeah, I think this was probably too much of a joke game, quite frankly. And not enough of a fighting game for me. This feels like in today's day and age, you might run into problems with YouTube doing this, or a video covering a game like this getting flagged. Let's see. It does say it has Jesus, Buddha, Moses, Zeus, Odin, and many more in the description. So yeah, apparently Jesus was taken out and put back in the game. Now, for the video quality, I think they probably did put a decent effort in here to make it a decent fighting game. I just don't think it's a great fighting game. And then you do have some variety here that is just out of character. Like, is this supposed to be Athena or some other character? I have no idea who this is. And let's see. This is probably Moses. This is Buddha. This is Odin. This is Santa Claus. But some of these other characters are kind of unrecognizable. And is this a second Santa Claus, or is this Saint Nicholas and this Santa Claus, or what? Yeah. I feel like the joke is, let's see, this is Mizu, is that M-A-Z-U, Mazu? And I can't read that name. Can't read that name, it's too small text. Yeah, I think this is too much of a joke for me. In modern time, this has got to leave the follow list. It's too risky, and frankly, like, not updated enough. And I don't know how long you could go with a game like this, really, because you would, unless you're gonna go very, very deep, which is what the MOBA game I think was planning on doing, at least, where there was a ton of games, a ton of lesser known, lower pantheon gods that were going to be added, kind of like a gacha game where it's just there's always a new character being added. That's what I would want to see here, is that this should be closer to something like Smash Brothers, where there's a ridiculous amount of characters. So moving on, next game we have is called Final Assault. That took more time than normal because, yeah, it's right on the line. Like, I could see it being pretty funny for 30 minutes to play that game, but I don't know if that really is a game that is worth paying that much money for to play for 30 minutes, or a game that really needs to be highlighted to people as a game that they should check out and play. It gets too dangerous to what so many people on YouTube do, so many streamers do, where they're playing terrible, awful jump scare horror games, and then they're overacting to the jump scares, and then convincing people to buy things like Five Nights at Freddy's, which is at best mediocre game series, just because streamers have made those games popular, and they've made themselves popular as streamers by playing bad games or mediocre games. Next we have this game, Final Assault, which looks like it's a VR game, probably from PlayStation VR, where you're directing and controlling units, drawing the path. which is an interesting way to do a real-time strategy, I suppose, is just sticking your finger on the ground and drawing a path where you want the units to go. And I assume each unit has a mediocre amount of pathfinding skills and will just do whatever it was pre-programmed to do, or what it wants to do when you're not telling it direct instructions. Otherwise it would be a really slow experience. That being said, this feels like an experimental game, because this is definitely an unproven game. It requires VR, so at best case scenario I leave this on the follow list because I don't own a VR headset, and right now I'm not really planning on ever buying a VR headset, but I do want to keep the best of the best games on the follow list in case I ever do decide to do that. Note 5/16/2019 price will go from $19 to full price of $29.99. So this was $10 cheaper before that point. This is not a tower defense game, but a new style of action strategy that mixes real-time strategy and mobile with play mechanics crafted for virtual reality. It does seem like it is doing something very different for VR, and I think that alone justifies this being being on the follow list, because so many VR games you're just standing in one place and shooting at zombies that are running towards you, and so they have done something that is notable, definitely. So for that reason, I'm gonna keep this on the follow list. I'll again probably never buy a VR headset, probably never buy this game even if I did buy a VR headset, because at $30 it's probably too expensive. Also, by the time I did buy a VR headset, I'm sure there would be some other element here. This does have online multiplayer and single player, so there's a little bit for everybody. Moving forward then. Next we have a physics game called Find the Balance, where you're trying to balance things, for lack of a better term. This kind of looks like a mobile game being ported to Steam, or you know, it's kind of Tetris with real world objects. And so the trick here is you are given a standard platform object, and then you have to put more objects on top of that platform object so that they don't fall on into the gears. And so you'll move an item while it's hanging from a rope, and then you have to cut the rope to permanently place it. So it's not like Tetris where pieces are just constantly coming down. You seemingly have as much time as you want to do it, but it does have a lot of the hallmarks of a mobile game. 3 stars, timer. Maybe there is some timer element to this. This is a physics game, of which I've seen lots of physics-based games, and it has only one verified purchase review. This came out September 28th, 2018. It may have been on the Switch also. It's $2.49. So with that, it says it has 100 plus levels. With that though, it feels like it is a non-relevant game. There's just no relevancy here. The one negative review says it's broken. The person who activated it via Steam key, so maybe got it for free. Actually it says it was received for free. Put it positively. So I buy into the one review that it's broken, therefore this is leaving the follow list. And honestly, I don't really need to play any kind of physics-based game like this. If you wanted to try something like this, there is Mount Your Friends. That's a little lewd and dirty, not terribly so. It's teen humor, but that would work. Or you might try getting over it with Benetti Foddy too. That might be somewhat similar style game. Moving on, we have First Person Tennis, the Real Tennis Simulator. This came out April 11th in 2019. And I remember putting this on the follow list, and it got enough reviews really fast. So it is a VR tennis simulator game that looks very good, and probably sets the new standard as far as quality, as far as VR games that are tennis simulators. Again, it's $24.99, but you certainly would spend more on tennis equipment and tennis club fees to play tennis, although you'd also almost certainly have a different experience doing that. I imagine what you would run into is, if you are a big time tennis player, this would be great for rainy days or days you can't go to a tennis court. It has 13 tournaments, 7 different surfaces, 4 camera modes, a training mode, full ranking system. Is it online multiplayer? Yes, so you can play against other people. 2-player split screen. Game also runs in non-VR mode and is playable with a joypad and keyboard. Nobody has used the phrase joypad in probably 30 years. It's a joystick is what we call things nowadays, because almost every controller does have some form of analog stick. If it was a joypad, then it would only have a D-pad and buttons and no stick. So in this weird situation, it says it requires VR headset, but then it says like it runs in no VR mode too and is playable with a joypad or a keyboard. So it would be a little risky to buy this, but yeah, I think I'm willing to put this on the follow list. There is one thing that comes up as a red flag though. Here we have a Russian review that then is in English too. So let's look at the negative reviews alone. There's only 11 of them, because there might be some review manipulation going on here. And if a game was manipulating its reviews, it would have they would add a few negative ones, so it doesn't look like it's 100% accurate. 92% positive. Let's see. Good, but at the moment no multiplayer is advised, so the game looks potential at first, and playing single player in arcade mode is fun, but I have to refund this game. First, the simulation, just a small tap with the racket causes the ball to fly way over the court. It's impossible to hit the ball and bounce unless I hold the racket completely still and let the ball bounce off of it. The game measures the ball speed, and it shows I hit it over 180 kilometers an hour with the slightest of touch. Second split screen just does not work. There's no instruction anywhere in the game on how to start split screen mode. Direction of the ball is heading feels unnatural and off. There's an options to make it slightly better now though. Needs lots of improvement. Game keeps crashing. See, the gameplay isn't smooth. It's another negative review. I think what I want to do on this game is, because there is this question of review manipulation. You have, on a day it gets 6 positive reviews, it also gets 2 negative reviews. On a day it gets 4 positive reviews, it gets 1 negative review. So it feels like there are just bits and starts in which it is getting a lot of reviews, although these numbers aren't swinging too much. What is most surprising is the 15 reviews when the day it came out. but that's not super surprising either. I think this just needs more time. I want to see some more reviews, because 95% or 92% of 141 reviews seems a little too good to be true, and there's something about this, and maybe I'm just being paranoid, there's something about this that just feels too good to be true. Even when you watch this video, they're having, who I assume is a famous tennis player, pretend like he's someone else, come out to an area where he is playing tennis in VR against other people, so that he can walk out of the room and reveal to them that he was actually playing it. So okay, yeah, that's a very polished video that is being shown, and it's not really showing a lot of the in-game animation. And for my uses, maybe playing in the non-VR mode is perfectly fine. Maybe it's just the VR mode that needs polishing. But I want to give this some more time, so I'm just going to leave it on the follow list. Next, we have a game called Vision Superstar X, and I probably should be going through these games a little bit faster. This is the time to give them their proper consideration, and as much time as necessary, but also I kind of don't want to have to spend 10 or 20 minutes on every single game. So what is this? A roguelike tagged difficulty, difficult, action, and funny. I'm not sure I want to play a game that's tagged difficult, quite frankly. It says you tour the space system on a desperately randomly generated bomb run, face impossible odds trying to achieve the demented dream of an insane scientist. This to me looks like it is a shooter game with roguelike elements more than anything else, and selling itself on being difficult is not something that particularly would interest me. I kind of like the crazy animation style here. It definitely looks visually different. Let's see, it's 89% positive right now. And I really can't get to the point where I'm just gonna say, well, let's give this game more time. But I kind of want to say, let's give this game more time. I need to make decisions, and I've hit a phase where I've run out of emotional energy to make decisions. This is $13.49 discounted. That's not suspicious. Full English, French, and Spanish. That's not suspicious. M for mature is a little weird. 33 achievements seems fine. A lot of pictures not loading. Let's look at the 4 negatives. Let's see. The target audience is a very patient roguelite player. This is a tough one, and if the option was available, I would be putting thumbs to the side right now. I have so many people complain about that. There's something interesting, some interesting elements with the 4 regions of your ship having to play to your current ship's problems and how to put your ship in the best chance to succeed. When the game starts to rev up its engines, you're barely surviving by the skin of your teeth. You can get some really fun moments, and it makes the game seem worth it. Problem is simple, it takes too long to get there, and it can feel really cheap when something goes wrong in the game in particular. And I guess that is something that I would complain about, in particular about even Rogue Legacy, which is a game I did like. All the other reviews are in different languages. Rogue Legacy is a fine roguelite style game, but it does take some grinding sometimes to get to defeating the final boss. More grinding than it probably should. It requires a third-party end-user license agreement, which is suspicious, to say the least. yeah, I don't think I can get around it selling itself as a hard game. As much as games come out and say they're the Dark Souls of this and the Dark Souls of that, or how much Dark Souls itself was advertised as a hard game, when that's really not, I think, the intent of the creators of Dark Souls. I think their intent was to make a pretty standard RPG style game, and it was just sold by the advertisers as being extremely difficult when it's not as difficult once you figure out what the game wants you to do. Yeah, I think this leaves the fall list just because it's selling itself as difficult. After playing FTL, which was one of the first games I ever covered on my channel, and playing 100 at least an hour long levels and beating FTL only 4 times or so, it really doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind that I would want to play something that was a lot like that. Also, I am not a huge fan of shooters, so for me this isn't down my alley. Maybe this is a game that would catch other people's attention, so I'll give it the shout out here and move forward. Next we have Floor Plan Hands-On Edition. I believe this might be playable outside of VR. Otherwise, this is just going to stay in the VR. It's $5.99. Floor Plan, I actually know what this game is. You go from floor to floor on an elevator. Each floor is kind of a separate bespoke scene that you really don't enter the scenes, you just kind of look into it. It feels somewhat like a escape the room style mobile game, and if it wasn't so cheap I would suggest skipping it. The other part I would say here is it's wasting itself being VR only, because it would be just as easily sold outside as a non-VR game. Takes about an hour to complete. It really is kind of a demo game that you might give a younger kid to VR, and it's relatively simplistic game also. That being said, it's 93% positive of the 47 user reviews. I think we can just leave this on the fall list because it's VR. There is a good chance that something better than this would come out and replace this at some point. What's the difference between Floor Plan Hands-On Edition and Floor Plan in general? Let's see. Yeah. If there is another Floor Plan game, let's see what this developer has made. There's a Hands-On Edition, there's a Long Together, which is a different game. I think I looked at that game too. And then there's an Adventure Time game. I would say this developer, Turbo Button, has a chance to be a successful company in the future if they can maintain funding and continue working on projects. Yeah, this will just stay on the fall list though. You really can't do anything with it otherwise, and it probably isn't even worth their effort to make a non-VR version. Next we have this game called Flying Metal Suit, which is definitely a low effort name, and this seems to be a pretty low effort game. It's a VR aerial racing game where you put your hands forward like you were pretending you were Superman, and direct your intention of where you're going to fly, I assume, by how the ways your wrist twist and how your two hands line up. The idea is not terrible. The implementation here is pretty terrible. These are just asset flips all over the place, and it makes itself out like a racing game, but it probably isn't that interesting of a racing game either. It's $4.99. It's single player only, so it really isn't a racing game. This is a game that can leave the fall list. I was hoping that maybe I'd find something that would replace this, a better example of this. The idea of giving people the ability to fly around in VR is interesting, but then how do you connect real world movement, moving your arms and legs and your body, to an ability that humans don't have, which is flying? So this is probably a decent thought, but again, terrible implementation. So this is going to leave the fall list. And I want to be careful not to become a sucker, as it were, for VR games. But even in that example, that is a different style VR game instead of just standing in place, waiting for the zombies to run towards you, shooting the zombies with a gun, and then waiting for the next zombie to come towards you. Next we have Flynn and Freckles, a third-person single-player game, platformer. It looks kind of like a Super Mario Bros. 64 clone, for lack of a better. Is it easier to say Super Mario Bros. 64 clone, or is it just easier to call it a 3D platformer? I think 3D platformer is a lot less syllables. Seems like you're playing as a pirate, and I do have a bit of a love for pirate games, silly pirate games. I guess the old pirate stories probably were a lot more bloody and gruesome compared to the cartoony pirates that Telltale and did with Secret of Monkey Island. So this game isn't relevant, though. It has only 6 user reviews, and it came out September 7th, 2018. It's $14.99. It's English and Spanish. So either it's a hidden gem, or it plays terribly and it's not good or crashes. If I wanted a more relevant 3D platformer, I could play Ukulele, or A Hat in Time. So what do we have here as far as negative reviews? 4 out of the 7 reviews are negative. So let's see them. Unfortunately, bought the game before trying it, so may not be able to refund it. Even the first area, it was unplayably buggy. Imagine Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Now imagine you have to constantly manual adjust the camera angle, and you have to do you have a 50-50 chance of the platform you're jumping on will glitch out from under you, and you'll pass through to the solid rock. There's another not recommended that seems like it's formatted very odd. It's broken. They couldn't finish the first level because of the horrible jumping mechanics. You jump higher if you stand still, but to reach the first cave, you have to run and jump. Well, good luck with that. So, while we have interesting graphics and a good job by the advertising department to sell your product here, it's just bad gameplay design. And I don't see any updates or any bit of information that would make me think that they ever fixed it. This very possibly could have been a half-finished product that was supposed to be released on a Nintendo console, or maybe even the Xbox or PlayStation, and they lost their funding and just put it out on Steam. This is the trick certainly you can take from any game, is that since you're just looking at stationary screenshots, you can hide every single problem with movement mechanics or gameplay mechanics. The video, it takes a little bit more trickery to hide that, but it's not too difficult to jump cut away from elements. See how it's showing only a few seconds of gameplay before it jumps to another few seconds of gameplay. So for all you know, in between each jump cut the game crashed or locked up, or the person playing it could not succeed at what they're supposed to be doing. Like, even when they are showing jumps, they're not showing people actually landing on them. And that's a rather good video too. Unfortunately, the reviews are in. Mob rule in the opposite way. This looks interesting, but clearly plays terribly, and I have no self-hate in my heart that is that big that makes me want to play a bad game that has already been reviewed enough to let people know it's a bad game. Next we have this game called Forager. Now my problem with Forager, because this came out on April 18th, 2019, it's not been 6 months. My problem with it is it keeps changing what it is, as far as I can tell. It starts as a kind of Minecraft clone, and then you unlock dungeons, and then you're doing kind of grinding, killing enemies in dungeons, but it also has kind of a Stardew Valley element, and I didn't really like Stardew Valley, and it seems like it just keeps changing, and at some point it becomes like a clicker, and at some point it's a building management section where you're buying buildings and sim citying the game throughout the game, and just doing so many varied things. It's going to be hard to find somebody that would like all of those gameplay elements and be okay that all those gameplay elements change or stop being emphasized. This is from being published by Humble Bundle, which I do mostly support Humble Bundle because you can buy games and get Steam keys and give 100% of the profits to a charity if you adjust the sliders appropriately and make sure you do that. But that's kind of my end of the love for Humble Bundle. And even now, Humble Bundle has started giving away games for free, but if you want a Steam key, you have to pay $1. So then the game is $1, not for free, if you want to keep all your games on your Steam store, your Steam library, which is exactly what I would demand. Forager is also $19.99. I have to have all the games on my Steam library because I have too many games. It's just over 1,000 games. You cannot have a Excel spreadsheet telling you where to go to play your games at that point. So Forager is Metacritic rated at 80. I think it's got enough coverage, and I think let's see. Apparently this person is getting their progress reset. I don't know why. The best reason I have to describe how I felt while playing this was that I was more addicted than I was having fun. Many progression loops are really great, but the micromanaging of all the factories and lackluster combat combined with really easy puzzles besides the weird galaxy rooms, which are more like riddles and I can't figure out a single one. Yeah, I think Forager is just not for me. I think if people really think about it, Forager is probably not 100% for many people, because you just have to like so many different genres and being willing to play what are probably not the best examples of any genre. It's just taking on too much. If Forager had just been a Stardew Valley clone, that would have been fine. Or if it had just been a Legend of Zelda clone, that would have been fine. But Or if it had just been a clicker game, that would have been fine. But yeah, despite its extremely high reviews, I didn't want to put it on the wish list then. You know, on second consideration, I still don't want to put it on the wish list, so I'm going to remove it from the follow list. And that's okay. You know, sometimes there are just some games that, even though everybody else likes them, you can, from the face of them, realize that you aren't going to like them. You don't have to like everything that everybody else likes. That would make a very boring world if everybody had the same likes and dislikes. So next we have a game called Forgiveness the Escape Room, or Forgiveness: Escape Room. A series of 7 escape room adventures. Take the personality test and find out which sin you're guilty of. The room design, environment, and trials you'll go through will change accordingly. Interesting. So there's like potentially, if it's 7 different sins, then I guess there are 7 different variations of this escape room. Now, I don't want to play a ton of escape room games, and this is a horror-ish escape room more than most escape rooms are. I wouldn't be surprised if the game doesn't actually change that much. It may just start you in a different room, or it may just change the text on the wall. $9.99 is not bad. It doesn't seem like this supports VR. I don't think escape room games have to support VR, but a lot of them certainly have. There are still updates here. They made a Discord, they got achievements, they put in 7 achievements, which is a reasonable amount. It's 84% positive of 32 reviews. So the only thing I could think, minimal blood, references to sexual content, drug and alcohol reference, and moderate use of profanity. That's not anything. So of the 5 negative reviews, is there anything? The puzzles are so far-fetched compared to the demo. They don't ease you into it. I don't have a problem with that. Not worth €9. Pretty confusing puzzles that don't follow much logic. I play point-and-click adventure games, so Moon Logic and Crazy Logic is fine by me. 2 hours to go through all the rooms. Not big problem there. Way too short. So they left people wanting with the length. Where a game like The Room is arguably a rather long game, and it still is kind of wanting in the number of puzzles. I definitely recall playing The Room 2 and just burning through the puzzles rather fastly, or feeling like I was, but then I think I did also take a pretty long time to play the entire game. So it is definitely possible that games can make you feel like you're running through them rather fast, and then at other times you feel like they're taking forever, and the truth is somewhere in between, or the complete opposite of what you feel. The Doom reboot, which I am halfway through playing, feels a lot like that, where it takes about an hour and a half to get through one level, but it feels like you're running through the levels rather quickly, because there's often long hallways with very little amount of enemies. As for this game though, Forgiveness the Escape Room, seems good enough to me. Maybe I wouldn't want to pay $9.99. If I got this at $5 and it became a hour-long or 2-hour-long mini-series on my YouTube channel, that's perfectly fine. A game like this probably would work rather well in October when I'm covering scary games, because often I have gaps that I could fill in there with a shorter experience. Let's see. next we have a game called Fox Hime Zero. That's Japanese Hime. So this is a visual novel anime RPG adventure game with some anime fox girls. So what do we really take from this otherwise? Nothing really. This is, I suppose, from my perspective, the fox girl anime trope is halfway to a furry trope, where furries are more anthropomorphized. Man, I'm not going to be able to say that word. Human-looking animals, and there are a few furry games on Steam, particularly either directed at furries or jokes towards furries. Whereas I would say most fox girl anime games are really just a niche spin-off of your standard visual novels. I imagine there is a romance element here, and fox spirits in general are from, I guess, Shintoism or Buddhism, although the actual origins I'm a little uncertain on. From what is being shown here, this is probably an edited, censored game for $1.99, which is actually really, really cheap for a visual novel. And it's from Sakura Game, which tends to not put out the best of quality visual novels. There's a lot better. So I suspect this is rather short and just tends to lean on the lewd side. It has full Japanese audio, which means something to it. There's seems to be some DLC, and here's a cosplay album for 99 cents. 8 achievements, and you can see they're just putting out more and more games. It's using the Live 2D program, which will be used in most visual novels going forward, where, let's see if I can show it off. The characters, the Live 2D program adds motion to stationary images to make them look like they're being animated when they really aren't. It's using some kind of algorithm to stretch the pixels one way or the other so it sways. It can be done rather nicely, it can be done pretty poorly, and but it certainly is a breakthrough in visual novels. So let's see what the 44 negative reviews are. Rarely play visual novels, so I'll keep that in mind. The game is cheap, so it's hard not to recommend. For the price, it's a small loaf of bread where you get about plus 2 hours of visual novels. I don't really have a problem with a really short visual novel. The visuals are great so long as you can see from the screenshots. Blah blah blah. Let's skip over to this review. Boring. I'd rather read online comics than break my mouse with 100,000 clicks that took me to get through all the text and the limited art. No decision making, just straightforward dialogue. Good thing it was dirt cheap. Story is lousy too. There's no option to press, but the game is still running. There are no boobs in the game. There's a severe lack of boobs in the game. Probably the worst English translation I've read in a good while. Let's see. Most visual novels have you hold control to skip. There's no option for that. So, it seems like this is a cheap visual novel, and a short, cheap visual novel doesn't really line up with what I would want to cover in visual novels. I'd rather cover the 80-hour long AAA quality of visual novels and just cover that. So things like Steins Gate, things like Clannad, playing something that is designed to kind of just sell itself on a promise of cleavage when there really isn't that much, and it probably has very few images in total, and if there's no options, then it's not really even a game at that point, and it becomes a true novel with just pictures. It's just a picture book. I don't know how this game gets tagged as RPG if there literally aren't any decisions at all. So I'm gonna leave this, remove this from the fall list. I don't need to scrape the bottom of the barrel for visual novels. Alright, well this one is tagged gore, violence, nudity, and sexual content, so let's go to blur mode here and see what we can do to load that in. Now the thing here I want to see is if the screenshots are highlighting extreme amounts of gore, violence, or sexual content, and I don't think they are. So I'm gonna risk it. So this game, Fresh Body, looks like a top-down twin stick hack and slash 'em up game. It is tagged gore, but I don't see violence or sexual content as a tag. In the last 30 days, it's 61% positive. Defeat your enemies, take their body parts and replace them with yours, and become strong, and become another strong boss yourself. So the idea is interesting, certainly. Like, I don't hate the concept. This is an early access, but it's been in early access since November 16th, 2016. So yeah, at this point the game has to be considered a failure. Like, you cannot be in early access since 2016 in 2019 and stay on the follow list. It really is just a straight up snap decision at that point. It's a shame. I like the concept. I kind of do. And the animation style doesn't seem crazy. The gameplay might be a little difficult, and the camera might be a little too zoomed in, but this feels like this was trying to be a Binding of Isaac clone without really having the skill to make a good game in the first place. And I think that's where this game fails. So that's a shame, but you know, there's a whole list of games that could have been good games. They had interesting concepts, but that's not the case. Next we have a game called Frio Lost in Old Town. I believe this is a small project by a single developer, and if it's the game I'm thinking about, this video that was just shown has actually been added and more content has been added. This is 72% positive, and it is one of these Japanese horror games. Did that ghost jump out of the box, or was the ghost the box, or it jumped through the wall, I guess? This looks a little bit like a mobile game. It's, I think, still in development. Yeah. It might be a little bit of a simplistic game. You can see it's $2.99, so they're not asking for a lot, so they're probably not selling a lot. There's 3 games here: Lost in Old Town, and then Frio 2, Memory of My Sister, and then Frio 3, Painting and Meaning, which came out February of 2019. So I guess he's episodically releasing these games instead of making a single game of a reasonable size. He is just making a series of small things, and probably asking too much when you think of it that way, as a if you thought of all 3 games as one, and then they probably play for less than an hour, if I was to guess. So an hour-long game for $6 is probably asking too much. The only negative review here is in Asian language and English. They can't start the game. Each time I try to start it, the computer reports an error, then the system crashes. Must reset my computer. Tried 3 times. I don't think it's an accident. If we go to the other languages of negative reviews, there's a lot of different negative reviews. What languages does this game support? It says it supports Russian and Spanish. It oddly is not supporting Japanese, so it seems like it might be a Thai game, because Thai really stands out. Well, it actually does support Japanese there. So the game, I wouldn't be surprised if the game developers from Thai. Let's see, maybe I should limit this to my language, which will just be 7 reviews. I'm a little iffy on this. It's skirting the line as a game from what would be something where I'd probably want to buy all 3 of the games and play all 3 of the games over the course of 3 episodes that are less than 30 minutes long. You can see there's a lot of links. Apparently this is also called Pongo Go Go, from what this is being shown. And this definitely does look like it's a mobile game that's just been ported. And your video is just going to have ads all over it. Yes, there's something here that feels fishy and unprofessional, and this does feel like a mobile game. I would like to see a Japanese horror game like this, that looks like this. The Fatal Frame series in particular comes to mind. If the Fatal Frame series was on Steam, I would remove this in a second, and I think because of that statement alone, I probably should remove it. Let's see, there are no reviews that are positive in English according to that link. These reviews could all be paid for. I don't see any of these positive reviews feeling specifically real. Yeah, it just feels like there's something fishy about what's going on here. Then if I was to look at the 3rd game in the series, you can see the animation style has well, I'd say more than slightly, quite significantly improved from what it was. So maybe the game developer is getting better at animating things and doing his own side projects. That being said, this screenshot and this screenshot look like the exact same elements that were in the first game, and the puzzle looks the same too. So unless Frio 3 Parting and Meeting is a partial reboot, there's still something kind of weird about it. Yeah, I think it does just boil down to the thought that if a better known yet still very much niche Japanese horror style game was on Steam, like the Fatal Frame series, I would play that. And I really don't need to jump into the idea of playing something that's probably lacking in length. So do I leave this on the follow list? Or do I follow my paranoia, which tells me this game is probably not that good. Because the thing here is, if this was amazingly good, if this was the Japanese equivalent to Five Nights at Freddy's, why hasn't anybody else found this and played this? There's so many horror games on Steam, I know, and that's part of the problem, but even in that statement, there aren't a lot of Japanese horror games on Steam. Let's see, the videos made it look better than it is. I paid only $3.99 for the game, so it wasn't much of a loss, but I had to request a refund out of principle, so I got it. It's a 2D game. I think it's probably a 2.5D game. It would be the best description, with set camera angles. Animation style in the second game in the series also seems to have changed drastically. Yeah, I just can't have faith in this game, so it's leaving the fall list. Next, we have a game called Fugal, which is a voxel looking style game, 3D pixel looking style game, blocky, kind of Minecrafty. Are you flying around like the previous flying around game? I think you are. This is rated 83% positive of 204 reviews. I have a decent graphics card, and I think anybody that does would not need a game to be voxel-y. And like this, you should be able to get smooth graphics. And quite frankly, if you are going to be playing a game where you're flying around, looking at the vistas and the landscape and the scenery would be a #1 selling point of that. So so the idea of not even getting a good experience because of the artistic direction really kills this idea. It seems like there's probably a terrain generator in this game, so that they're not even making the terrain so much themselves. Excuse me, I'm gonna drink some water and take a little bit of a break. It's been nearly an hour and 45 minutes. Yeah, I am definitely not sold on Fugal for the way it looks. It's in early access. It came out September 14th, 2017. It claims to be still working on it, but frankly, if I was running a bit of a scam, I would put out a bad game and put it in early access and continue to put out stories and updates so people think I'm still working on it, when I really am not. I'm not accusing this company of running a scam. That's just, there's been no progress. It's still in early access, so it's leaving the fall list. Next we have another adult game, so moving on. Next we have a game called Funk Unplugged, which seems to be a 3D platformer. You use musical powers and platforming abilities to save the world. That is good if it works and plays well. That is the if. This came out May 25th, 2018. Why did nobody play this? Why does it have only 8 user reviews? It's $9.99. Seems like there was an update December 3rd, 2018. Let's see what the negative reviews say. Well, there's only 11 reviews and they're all positive. So, see if we can find the negative parts of this. These seem to be possibly paid for reviews. That might be the thing. It was kickstarted, so maybe that's what happened, is it failed to get its funding on Kickstarter, or it succeeded to get its funding on Kickstarter, and then they took the money and ran, or or nobody else heard about it, so it didn't matter. Let's see. It's a simplistic game. What is the average playtime on all of these people? The thing is, it's so easy to manipulate the playtime. You have this really long review, 5 hours of playtime. And remember, this would be their playtime in total. So even if somebody loved the game and reviewed it after an hour of playtime and then played it for another 100 hours after they submitted a review, that playtime, I think, would keep going up. Actually, I don't know. Maybe it records what their playtime is as of the writing. Let's see. I'm seeing positive reviews for people who got the keys, so Kickstarter backers probably. But I'm seeing nothing negative here, and I'm not sure if this is just review manipulation. Great 3D platformer that deserves more exposure. The one thing I could do, and I wouldn't do this though, is I could go into the forum discussions of this game and see if people were complaining about it not running. Where would I even click to go there? View discussions, view update histories. That they hide all that what behind the click. Let's look at this developer too. They didn't make anything else. So I'm left scratching my head here. Do I risk spending $10 on a simplistic, probably short Super Mario 64 3D platform clone? Or do I just assume that this was a kickstarted game that barely has 10 levels in it and is just a really short experience? Like every time it cuts here, maybe this is just short, small, single levels. Maybe it's a really small island and then that is it. Maybe there's just a small house and a small city street. I guess watching this video, I don't want to just assume the worst. I also don't want to assume the best. I want to be as, I guess, balanced and fair as possible, and critical as possible. So I think I'll give this one a benefit of the doubt and put this on the wish list. And maybe I'll waste my money. We've seen that there's been a lot of other games that I've not been willing to put on the wish list. So this is probably a arbitrary decision. It might fall down just under the category of, if I waste my money buying a kids looking game, a kid friendly game, that's better than buying a Japanese horror game that less people would want to watch. Maybe it really just does boil down to that. Well, this has been pretty good. We're below 2 hours and we went through all of the games starting with the letter F, and we're now to games starting with the letter G. So that's where we're going to end this recording. There was a lot of agonizing over a lot of games, so I clearly need to take a little bit of a refresher. And inherently, what this probably will mean is that I will be more generous to games starting with the letter Z than I was to games starting with the letter A, because I'll always go through these cleanups alphabetically, and I'll always be exhausted mentally by the time I'm at the end doing games starting with the letter Z. If there are any games that start with the letter Z. But yeah, I need to take at least a little bit of a mental break. So that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos because it helps me with YouTube. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. That's why I did all of this work, to make sure my wishlist is curated and only has games that I really do want to cover. Or you could gift me a gift card. There is a Steam summer sale always around the corner, and that is the best time usually around to buy games for Steam. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.